vegetation and the intricate energies that flowed through the universe. Yet, he felt a deeper calling, a whisper from the mountains of Tibet, where ancient secrets awaited. Leaving behind the bustling streets of India, Jesus embarked on a treacherous journey through the towering peaks of the Himalayas. His path was fraught with peril, but his determination was unshakable. Finally, he arrived at a remote Tibetan monastery, nestled among the snow-capped mountains. Inside the monastery, ancient monks, their faces etched with the wisdom of millennia, welcomed him. They recognized Jesus' spiritual potency, and their eyes spoke of a shared purpose that transcended language. Through meditation and contemplation, Jesus learned the art of Reiki healing from the monks. The monks taught him to channel the universal life force energy, known as Ki or Chi, through his hands. They showed him how to harmonize the body's energy centers with Kundalini healing and chakras. Then also how to send healing vibrations to those in need and channel connections to manifest physical food, wine and water under command of his mind and tongue. Under their guidance and his unfathomable focus, Jesus honed his abilities, knowing that he was truly a Son of God and Christ in the flesh, which Christ is enlightenment and awareness of self that any being can achieve, becoming an immortal mortal from Christ consciousness. As Jesus delved deeper into the ancient teachings, he also learned about the cycle of reincarnation. The monks shared stories of souls that traversed countless lifetimes, each incarnation an opportunity for growth and spiritual evolution. Jesus embraced this concept, knowing that he too had journeyed through time, with each life serving as a stepping stone on his path to enlightenment. Years passed, and Jesus' time in Tibet drew to a close. The monks, who had become his spiritual brothers, bidded him farewell. Leaving Tibet, Jesus returned to the lands of the Middle East, carrying with him the profound knowledge of Reiki healing and the wisdom of reincarnation which he introduced to the people of Judea. He began his ministry not only as a spiritual leader, but also as a healer, using his hands to channel the healing energies he had mastered in India and Tibet. Throughout his life, Jesus shared his teachings of love, compassion, and healing, and his profound understanding of the interconnections of all beings. His journey to India and Tibet had transformed him into a divine messenger, and his legacy would echo through the ages, inspiring seekers to explore the depths of spirituality and the healing power that resides within us all. Remarkably, these unconventional claims find support in historical accounts. In the late 19th century, a Russian doctor named Nicholas Notovich embarked on extensive travels through India, Tibet, and Afghanistan. At the Tibetan Buddhist monastery of Hemis, he stumbled upon a document titled The Life of Saint Isa. This document narrates the story of a young man named Yeshua, born in Israel, who was considered the Son of God by Vedic scholars. From the ages of 20 to 29, Yeshua was educated in Buddhist texts. This newfound knowledge aligns with the concept of the three wise men and suggests that Yeshua traveled to India at the age of 18, where he learned and taught as a Buddhist. This narrative gains further credibility from the Gospel of Thomas, a text excluded from the modern Bible. It reveals Yeshua's profound spiritual teachings alongside his Buddhist and Hindu-like beliefs, emphasizing the inner journey to self-discovery and the recognition of the immortal spirit within. Gospel of Thomas says these are the actual sayings of Jesus. The first three passages of the Gospel reads, "And he said, whoever finds the interpretation of these sayings will not experience death." Jesus said, "Let him who seeks continue seeking until he finds. When he finds, he will become troubled. When he becomes troubled, he will be astonished, and he will rule over the all." Jesus said, "If those who lead you say to you, 'See, the kingdom is in the sky,' then the birds of the sky will precede you. If they say to you, 'It is in the sea,' then the fish will precede you. Rather, the kingdom is inside of you, and it is outside of you. When you come to know yourselves, then you will become known, and you will realize that it is you who are the sons of the living Father. But if you will not know yourselves, you dwell in poverty, and it is you who are that poverty." After 2 decades of exploration, Yeshua returned to Jerusalem to share his teachings and become the Savior and Messiah to his people. He gathered a following of men and many women, including Mary Magdalene as his most ardent supporter. Despite her pivotal role, some sought to tarnish her reputation, relegating her to the status of a prostitute in biblical texts. Nevertheless, historical evidence reveals her as a significant disciple who even built a church dedicated to Yeshua that is still standing in Israel. An intriguing cultural context arises when we consider that Jewish rabbis were traditionally required to marry to better understand the human experience. This tradition suggests that Yeshua too most likely had a wife and children, which does not lessen who he was or him being the Messiah. It was a mandatory tradition of the Jewish culture to be married and have children. What made Yeshua different from every person on this planet was his message and promise of afterlife for all people. The prevailing Jewish philosophy at the time was rooted in the belief that life began with the breath and ended with its cessation, with no heaven or hell ideology that was later created by the Vatican. Yeshua's teachings challenged this core belief, asserting that conscious awareness transcended physical death. This heretical notion threatened the very foundations of Judaism and contributed to Yeshua's characterization as a religious revolutionary, ultimately leading to his crucifixion. In essence, Yeshua's crucifixion, as depicted in this unconventional narrative, was a conscious act to demonstrate the immortality of the human spirit. This act aimed to unite Jewish beliefs with those of other cultures, recognizing the persistence of conscious awareness beyond the physical realm. The second crucifixion of Jesus Christ is one of the most profound and debated events in human history, and it has been portrayed differently in various biblical accounts. While the New Testament Gospels of Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John offer slightly varying alternative endings in many different translations on the crucifixion. However, some historical and theoretical discussions have arisen over the years, exploring the possibility that Jesus may have survived the crucifixion. In the ancient city of Jerusalem, during a time of great tension and political unrest, Jesus stood before the Roman governor, Pontius Pilate. The room was dimly lit, and the air was thick with anticipation as Pilate questioned this enigmatic Messiah from Galilee. Pilate, a shrewd and pragmatic ruler, was intrigued by the claims surrounding Jesus. Many had hailed him as a king, and yet his demeanor and message were unlike any earthly monarch. Pilate, seeking to understand the nature of Jesus' kingdom, asked him, "Are you the king of the Jews?" With calm and unwavering conviction, Jesus replied, "My kingdom is not of this world. If it were, my servants would fight to prevent my arrest by the Jewish leaders. But now my kingdom is from another place." John 18:36. Pilate furrowed his brow, puzzled by this response. He had expected a straightforward answer, but Jesus spoke of a kingdom that transcended the earthly realm. Sensing Pilate's confusion, Jesus continued, "You say that I am a king. In fact, the reason I was born and came into the world is to testify to the truth. Everyone on the side of truth listens to me." This statement by Yeshua, also known as Jesus, can be interpreted as his heritage was royal from another world or planet, and he was sent here to transcend mankind's consciousness the best he could for the time period he lived in. Later in the Gospel of Matthew, Jesus is described as being crucified and later buried in a tomb, with no suggestion of an alternative ending. Similarly, the Gospel of Mark, which was written 300 years later, tells the story of Jesus' crucifixion and the followers seeing his tomb empty and eventually seeing him later revived from death with no wounds. However, the oldest original translation from Aramaic to Greek of the Dead Sea Scrolls, which the scribes referenced, the story tells an unfinished story of the women disciples walking to the tomb and nothing else. This leaving no clarification on what really happened after Yeshua's burial, and the scribes had to finish their story on their own with their writing prowess. One theory is that Jesus may have experienced a form of suspended animation on the cross, resembling a deep coma. In this state, his vital signs could have become so weak that onlookers mistakenly assumed him to be dead. After being taken down from the cross and placed in a cool tomb, he could have been easily revived by angels who were